Welcome, and thanks so much for bringing yourselves, your experiences, and your interest to this session, which is creating essential documents. This is part of a series of workshops, the first in a series of workshops that are supported by the U.S. IMLS and funded by the California State Library through the Library Services and Technology Act. We're grateful to them for their funding. It's been coordinated by the LA as Subject Archives at Risk Committee, members of which are here with us today, and I want to acknowledge them, Mallory Fernier and Stella Castillo, and Lisa Posas, who is the project coordinator for LA as Subject, are all with us, and we are delighted to see everybody. I also see some folks that have been part of the LA as Subject community for a long time. Just want to say hi to those folks, a little shout out to familiar friends, and a warm welcome to those who are new to this group and to the topic of documentation for archives. I'm very excited to talk to you today. My name is Snowden Becker. I'm going to be hosting this workshop. And I'm excited to share with you some of what I have learned about documents and the living texts that guide our work in archives in my 20 plus years working with museums, libraries, archives, private collections, and collecting institutions of other kinds. And without further ado, I'm going to just go into our introduction section. And provide a little bit of an introduction and overview of what we'll be covering today. So here's our agenda. This is designed as a modular experience. So just so everybody knows, you are more than welcome to duck in and out as your schedule and as your bandwidth permits. I know Zoom fatigue is real, and I want to remind everybody that we are going to be recording this session and that we will be posting the segments for future reference on the LA as Subject website. So you'll be able to access if you zone out or have to take a break or a phone call, please feel free to do so and know that you'll have access to these resources and this recording later. I also want to mention that if there is anything that you want to keep confidential or within the group that's participating with us online today, you're more than welcome to just let us know and we can edit that out, fix it in post, and maintain some of the confidentiality that is sometimes necessary to share, learn, and discuss in a specific way the things that are most useful to us. So the modules that I've broken this down to are really starting from the very basic and the fundamental and working up to the big picture, strategic and long-term forward-thinking kinds of documents that we look at in institutions, but also on an individual or a department level. So if you're part of a smaller institution, a bigger institution, or an independent practitioner, I'm hoping you'll find resources and information in this session that will be really useful to you. So I am, oh, my screen sharing suddenly paused. How did I manage to do that? Let's get that back. So the fundamental documents that we're going to be talking about and going deep on today will be the mission statement, but I will also be covering in this module and in each of the others a range of other sort of connected or similar documents that you might be needing to generate, adapt from other models or examples that you find elsewhere, or update as your organization's needs change and evolve. Most documents are living documents in one way or another. Although things like a mission statement that's really foundational or fundamental may not change much over time, the way that we apply that mission or enact that mission or realize our organizational vision and strategies might change, or we might be creating different documents and messaging around our mission as the organization changes or undergoes new projects or takes on new initiatives and priorities. So we'll look at some of those larger, more specific examples in Module 2, where our case study will be a grant application, looking at what might be required and how organizations institutions and collections create a grant application, usually compiling existing documents or adapting existing documents or creating things like budgets and timelines based on information that might exist in a range of different places, and create repositories of documents that can be used over and over again to make the sometimes laborious process of applying for funding, creating projects, envisioning next steps more efficient and more effective and more consistent. We'll take a break from noon to 1 p.m. I will leave the Zoom room open. You are welcome to use breakout rooms or the chat pane to ask questions, exchange information, share experiences, or do a little networking and connecting with your colleagues who are here today. I definitely encourage that. We can create this sort of virtual social space as well as a kept repository. And again, that won't be recorded, but you will be able to connect through the Zoom room during the break. When we come back, we'll do module 3, which is documents and documentation, where we're going to be looking at the ways in which documents and documentation tend to overlap. And when we think about things going from projects to publications or presentations, how we think of documents as being not just capturing information, but sharing information as well. And module 4, we're going to talk about our documents from top to bottom as living documents, things that are not necessarily fixed in stone, but are going to be revised, rewritten, rethought, and re-examined, either as part of a strategic planning process that is focused and dedicated to that purpose, or as needs arise. So you may be needing to adjust a budget or a project description or a job description as your organization grows and changes. Then we're going to do just about 5 minutes of wrap up and evaluation. If you're watching online as a recorded version, there's a link to our evaluation form at the end of each individual module. And we'd love for you to be able to give us some feedback and fill those out if your time permits. It really means a lot to us and helps us provide excellent content on an ongoing basis and great feedback for the people who fund us. So the next stage here is talking about, before we jump into it and get into introductions, I really want to talk about what we're talking about when we're talking about documents and what we mean when we say essential. So which documents are really essential for an archive? There's a lot. At any point in your work with archives, you may deal with any or all of these things, or maybe generating any or all of these kinds of documents. Everything from mission statements, vision statements, and value statements that describe really fundamentally what your collection is, who it's for, and how you do the work that you envision, or the values that your organization seeks to embody and enact with their collecting activities, their programming, and all of their communications. You might have budgets, annual reports, collecting policies, or donation agreements. You might have permissions or ethics documents. You might have tax filings, press releases. You might have social media posts and policies. You might have a house style. You might have a volunteer manual or an employee manual. And thanks, Christian. I just want to note that it's totally fine to pop in and out of the session and to have your camera on or off as is most comfortable for you. Finding aids, cataloging manuals, workflows, waivers, health and safety guidelines, all of these things are part of the universe of documents that you might create or edit or update in the context of an archive and daily operations. So this world of essential documents is really big. What constitutes essential might really be determined by your specific factors and your specific context. So we're going to be focusing in on specific examples. The 4 modules, as I mentioned, are about mission statements, grant proposals, strategic plans, and documentation. or documentation and strategic plans. And absolutely, copyright information and documents. That's a great question from Denise. Copyright information and documents would definitely be included. Those might, in fact, be woven into any number of different documents, including donation and deposit agreements, the guidelines that you might have for visitors in a reading room about reproductions or taking photographs in a gallery or exhibition space. Copyright is definitely a big part of what we do. Often I say that archivists have to be more informed about copyright than most copyright lawyers, because what we do is so connected to the specifics of the materials in our collections. Often we have materials that relate to unknown people or people who have special vulnerabilities where we might need to go above and beyond the limits of the copyright law and think about things like what is ethical, or what are the rights of the subject of a photograph. And our own things like social media posts and policies might encompass copyright considerations, as well as privacy or fair use, all sorts of nitty-gritty. So we're going to talk about those in passing, and I'm going to refer you to a lot of resources that I think will be useful if those are issues that you need to do a deep dive in for your institution at this time. Obviously, we can't go into everything in all detail. We only have 4 hours today, so I want to make sure that we touch on everything and that I point you to information that's valuable. I can really help with that if you have questions for me, or if you bring things up in the introductory conversation that we're going to have right after this little first intro here. First and foremost, though, I want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of what our guidelines here are, and the guidelines that we want to establish for this group in this session today. Namely, providing and creating a space where everybody feels comfortable participating, whether you're speaking up by unmuting your microphone and asking a question, which you're welcome to do at any time, dropping a question into the chat pane, which if you prefer to remain anonymous and have me relate your question to the group without unveiling yourself, you're welcome to do that by directing a question to me or to Mallory or Stella, who are going to be operating as co-hosts today in the chat by changing the to from everyone to either me or Stella or Mallory. So do what feels comfortable for you, and do your best to make this feel comfortable for everybody else. We also want to respect confidentiality and privacy of people who are contributing today, especially when we're in breakout groups and people are sharing personal stories or experiences that might have sensitive information in them, or information about practices and policies at archives that may have changed. We know that policies and practices can really vary widely, whether you're an individual practitioner who's managing a personal family collection, or a small institution, or working as part of a unit of a bigger institution like a university, or an institutional archives at a museum or a library or a corporation. All of those choices require us to do the best we can with the information and resources we have. And we want to make sure that the stories stay here in the room, but the lessons that we're learning from one another can leave and be shared more broadly, not necessarily with attribution. So we don't want to tell tales out of school. And we also want to offer credit where it's due, and we want to create and contribute to a culture of collaboration and mutual support amongst our community of archives and archivists. We're generally folks who are confined to the LA area here today that are online and participating right now, but we are envisioning of this as something that we are contributing to the larger discourse on archives and how they work, and making this a community that is more sustainable, and collections that are safer and going to be accessible and well supported for the long term. So Not surprisingly, this is the first example I'm sharing today of a document, a community guidelines document that was adapted from other existing examples. So one of the first lessons and most important lessons I want to share today, or one of the biggest tips I want folks to come away with today, is the idea that that you almost never have to start from scratch when you are creating an essential document for your organization. And in fact, it's really great to be checking around to see what the standards for the community are and using other examples that work well and fit with what you're doing. As templates, models, or inspiration for your own essential documents. So these community guidelines that I've established today for our work in this session are adopted from the AMIA, the Association of Moving Image Archivists community agreement, which is a fairly recently established document for a fairly mature organization. AMIA has been around for over 20 years, and they've come to understand that in their events and in-person, their annual conferences, workshops, and online offerings, it's great to have a shared sense of community standards and practices. These guidelines that I've adapted from them are very, very truncated, and they are more descriptive of the behaviors and the expectations we have than they are prescriptive. We're not so much telling you what we want to do as sharing what we want to achieve through our actions. So the AMIA Community Agreement was informed by a lot of great examples, all of which take somewhat different approaches to this establishment of community guidelines. And I've provided a link here. I will also remind you all that we'll be sharing these resources through the LA as Subject website, and particularly Archives Help Desk, which I'm going to be returning to again and again today. I am a huge fan of the resources and materials and tools that are collected there, and we'll be adding to them throughout this workshop series. So don't worry too much about capturing links as they go by. Just know that these will be available to you, and feel free to take notes or ask questions about what you see if you choose to visit while we're in progress here. So